I noticed that my posting of my reflections about the new Hunger Games and Fourth Wing got more views than some of my other ones. So I'm just gonna, it sounds like people are interested in that topic, so why not record about it? So I recently read Sunrise Over the Reaping, on the Reaping, and I really enjoyed it. I have been a fan of the Hunger Games since I was in high school when the books came out before the movies. And, I was, at that time, I sort of prided myself on being a bit of a literary hipster because I would like read stuff before they became super popular. And so it was mostly with Twilight and the Hunger Games, like I read those books before they became movies and became like big craze. So anyway, I enjoyed a couple years ago that Suzanne Collins decided to write about President Snow backstory in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And now she decided to cover Haymitch's backstory, which I also really enjoyed, because then you're able to get more depth onto various characters that you just wouldn't get a perspective on. And I think it's very clever how she's done it, because in both of those so-called prequel books, she's followed that same kind of familiar formula that we're used to with the first and second Hunger Games books in the trilogy, in the main trilogy, of the games themselves. So at least the first part of the story of both Sunrise on the Reaping, I keep messing up the title, and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes both have that Hunger Games as the main container for the stories. And for some reason, that's just a nice kind of pattern container to enjoy the story, to really, because it's interesting to see how in the the history of the games, how they did it differently. Katniss and Peeta were treated to such luxury when it was their time for their Hunger Games. They were given just the top-notch everything. Whereas when Snow was a teenager and studying at the Capitol Academy, they decided to make the students, himself included, mentors to the games, and then he witnessed how the tributes were treated like animals. And that was an interesting story in that there was a whole lot about just, okay, how do we get more interest in these horrible games? But with Sunrise on the Reaping in particular, that story really focuses on, it's sort of that in-between state of the games where the circumstances are better for the tributes, but they're still nowhere near as luxurious as it is for Katniss and Peeta. Like, they had been given like a nice little, they'd been given a training center, and they were staying in some, I guess, like kind of for rent apartments in the Capitol, almost like Airbnbs or something. But by the time Katniss and Peeta were in the games, there was this custom tower just for the tributes, and it was very luxurious. So it was kind of interesting to see the transition. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that in this video, I will be going over spoilers. I didn't in the first video or the first recording I posted. This isn't a video, it's a recording. And so yeah, let me get into it then. So yeah, you learn that Haymitch is a kid growing up in the Seam, which is the most kind of impoverished area of District 12, and his father died, and so he is the oldest son. His mother has two boys. He's the oldest, and so he's taken on the position of the man of the household and works outside of school to earn a little extra income to give his mother. And his occupation is, funnily enough, working for this lady who makes like moonshine or something. So kind of a distillery sort of job. And at the time, he did not drink at all. He was just like doing that job, wasn't interested in drinking, but liked that process. And he's got a girlfriend who's one of the Covey girls, which is what Lucy Gray is or was in the Ballad of Songbirds of Snakes, the love interest for President Snow. So you'll see some parallels later on in the story with that. But her name is Lenore Dove. So Lenore, like from the Edgar Allan Poe poem, and dove as in the color dove. It's a little bit of a stretch, as they joke about, but dove is a gray color. And she's got like a rebellious streak, whereas Haymitch really tries to lay low for the most part until at the reaping, when a tribute tries to run away and gets executed, the peacekeepers are trying to restrain the boy's mother from going after to the body, and then like Lenore, Haymitch's girlfriend, is trying to let the peacekeepers do their, like, stop the peacekeepers from restraining a mother from getting to her son. And Haymitch is afraid of her getting killed or just in trouble, so he goes and interferes. And then they're like, oh cool, we found our new victim for the reaping, our new tribute. And so then, yeah, he becomes the tribute. But this story is this overall story has a lot of content about how the media shapes what we think is reality, how much media can shape our perception of reality. Because as it turns out, the reapings are not recorded exactly live. There's a bit of a delay, so it wouldn't look good to the rest of the districts if they had seen the peacekeepers shoot that other tribute, and the fact that, like, oh, they killed that tribute already. District 12 already lost one of their boys. No, they re-recorded the whole freaking thing. So they falsified that Haymitch's name was actually drawn from lottery, or whatever you want to call it. And that theme happens a few more times. In this one, we meet Plutarch Heavensbee, who, if you remember from the Hunger Games trilogy, was a prominent person in the rebellion movement, and he has apparently been a big part of the rebellion movement for a long time. He was already the events of the main series happened. So Plutarch was there running the news crew and orchestrated the whole refilming thing, but he starts to try to cozy up to Haymitch because he sees potential in Haymitch as a rebellion figure or leader. And so yeah, through this book has them go through training, and Haymitch starts to just feel more and more rebellious towards the capital. He's like, well, what do I have to lose at this point? They're going to kill me anyway in the games. So we start to see a familiar cast of figures in this story. We see BT, who was in the second and third Hunger Game books. We see Virus and Mags as well, also in those books. And we learn, later on, we learn that how Virus kind of started to have that kind of mental or speech impairment that she has over time, because earlier in the beginning of the book she can walk fine, no problem. But as we see her in the second and third Hunger Games, or is it, no, it's just the second, because she dies in the second one. In the second Hunger Games, she's got kind of like, she can only sort of speak almost in riddles and partial sentences. And so it's hard to kind of understand what she's saying. We learn how that happens in this book. And so anyway, Mags is there, and she and Wyrus are the mentors to District 12, because District 12's only other victor is, they have no idea where she is. We still don't know if Lucy Gray is alive. It's kind of, we're kind of led to believe that she is. Like, everybody sort of thinks she is, who knows about her, like the Coveys do. But it's not verified. She hasn't shown up in the books, for instance. And so the other tributes are pretty interesting. So there's one other, there were two girls and then two boys, of course. Haymitch is one of the boys, and then the other boy is named Wyatt. And Wyatt is the son of one of the prominent groups of people who gamble in the district. But there's also sort of a sleazier group of them that bet on the Hunger Games themselves. And one of the girls who came with them really judges Wyatt for that. She really looks down on him because of that. And Luella is her name. Luella grew up with Haymitch. Their families were close, and apparently when they were pretty young, she decided that Haymitch would be her boyfriend, and so her sweetheart, as she called it. So she followed him around until she decided to move her affections onto someone else. So Haymitch would call her sweetheart throughout the book, which is what he calls Katniss. And we learn later on that Katniss reminded him of Luella, and that's why he always called her sweetheart. So unfortunately, Luella dies during a stupid accident that happens with the chariot parade, where the tributes get in their chariots and are paraded before President Snow, and something happens with their horses, and there's a chariot crash and stuff, and so then Luella dies. And then the other female tribute from the district is Maisily Donner, and I remembered her because of she was mentioned in the second Hunger Games book, and maybe even the first, kind of in passing, because Katniss has a friend named Madge, who's the mayor's daughter, and Maisily was her aunt, and Maisily had her twin sister Marilee was Madge's mother, so she was a twin, and nobody from District 12 quite liked Maisily at first. I mean, all the kids didn't like her because she was stuck up and rude, really said what she thought, which often was fairly judgmental. But as we get through the book, we see her we see her as a pretty good person overall. She is passionate and just a really cool character. I liked her a lot, and I liked the relationship she had with Haymitch, which was totally platonic. He called her, they started calling, towards the end, they start to call each other brother and sister, thinking of each other as family, and I really liked that. But Wyatt, the boy who was from that betting family, he was really good at figuring out the odds of situations. So that was kind of an interesting thing that he did, and pretty useful. But yeah, they discover while they're doing training that BT's son, Ampert, is leading an alliance between all of the districts to try to counter the careers. and they end up calling themselves the newcomers. And so basically they have more numbers than the careers, and they're very hopeful. During the interviews, they're presenting about themselves like, oh, we're the newcomers, and they present themselves a lot better than the careers, who present themselves as just kind of meatheads, and so but of course during the games the careers are still doing pretty well because they've trained for that their whole lives, and the newcomer alliance, it sticks together, but a lot of them are killed during that first bloodbath. But yeah, Ampert was put into the games to punish BT for something rebellious he did. And overall, the story has a lot of violence and death. We get to see into Plutarch's mansion, and there's just a lot of intrigue about what gets shown to the public, and a lot of it is heavily altered. And there's just a lot of questions that come up, kind of based off of a philosopher, David Hume's writing about why do so many people give up their power to those that are few. There's only a few people in charge. There's several situations where the tributes outnumber the peacekeepers, and there's a moment where they could have rebelled, but then they didn't. And then there's a question, why didn't you rebel? There's a lot of just really interesting questions that come up in this book about how these few can shape the masses' opinions, and how the many let themselves have their power taken away by the few. And that the book overall is really a lot of seeing what we know is going to happen. We know Haymitch has nobody. We know he starts wasting his life away drinking. But we see why. He was punished more than just kind of figuring out how to break the arena, as is implied in the book, in the main trilogy. He tries to blow up the arena. He tries to break the generator. He tries to break everything. And he's partially successful, but not successful enough. And towards the end, he has a discussion with Plutarch about how somebody else will come. Someone else like him is going to come, and maybe they'll have better luck and better timing. And it turns out that person who's like him was Katniss. And there's a lot in the main trilogy about how Katniss and Haymitch are a lot alike. And this book really shows it. Haymitch looks out for a lot of younger kids. He's watching out for them, younger kids come to him, and that's something that Katniss was known for, and something that Haymitch actually was frustrated with Katniss about, but probably because he saw himself in her. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the book, and I recommend it. I wanted to discuss how, I guess, I have this theory about, it doesn't say who Lenore Dove's mother is, the girlfriend of Haymitch, Lenore Dove, but I think her mother is Maud Ivory, which is one of Lucy Gray's cousins that is in the first, or that early prequel, because towards the end, Haymitch finds the graves of a bunch of Coveys, and Maud Ivory, he notices Maud Ivory, and he notices specifically Lucy Gray. And the poem written on Lucy Gray implies that the Coveys don't think she's dead, they just gave her a headstone. However, Maud Ivory is presumably dead, and Lenore Dove's mother apparently died in childbirth. So that's why I think it's her, just because Suzanne Collins specifically mentioned Maud Ivory grave as a hint. But yeah, unfortunately, at the end of the books, Haymitch's mother and brother are burned in a fire, a house fire, which is made to look like an accident, but of course it's no accident. And then Lenore Dove is poisoned with these gumdrops, and Haymitch doesn't realize they're poisoned until he realizes it right after she takes a bite, but it's too late. They were red gumdrops, which is kind of interesting. Reminds me of Snow White and the red poison apple. But of course, red is a significant color for Snow with his roses and everything. But yeah, he told Haymitch to enjoy his homecoming. Those are some nasty words. So he did what was worse than killing Haymitch. He killed the ones that he loved and made him suffer through that, which is what he did to BT as well, made him suffer through the loss of his son, knowing that it was his actions of rebellion that led to him being punished by having his son be in the arena. And his son was certainly not going to be allowed to live. He had these months that were programmed just for him. Main series with Katniss and Peeta watch tribute kill some Rainmakers, and so yeah, they were not going to be allowed to live because of that. And President Snow tried to poison Haymitch during the games, but Haymitch didn't fall for it, and then a series of actions happened where one of the remaining tributes was killed, and then it was just down to him and one of the careers, and he ends up winning because he was able to take advantage of that force field, which is why Katniss thought he was punished. In reality, it was just one of the many reasons he was punished, because of his seditious activities. So later on, when Haymitch is watching, he observes how many things were changed, how many things were altered, and presumably that's the recap that Katniss did. He wonders, what did the people actually see during the live broadcast? Did they see what he did? And then if they did see, did they forget so easily of what really happened? And that's an interesting question. You know, when we see something for the first time, and then we see the official people telling us something different later on, what do we believe is true? So, like I said, this book raises a lot of really interesting questions, and I eat that kind of stuff up. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. If you made it this far, thanks for listening to my ramblings about this book. If you did like it, let me know. I can do more reflections on other books I've read. I'm not as voracious as I used to be because I'm a lot more selective about what I read and what I want to fill my time with. So, but if it's something I've read or something that appeals to me, happy to talk about it because I do enjoy reading good stories.